Good evening. Tonight, a clearer future for thousands of people who depend on our armed forces.
The Ministry of Defence is a huge employer in this region. 17,000 military and MOD staff are based here. 11,000 other jobs depend directly on MOD contracts. The many bases around the region include one of the Army's largest at Colchester. Thousands of troops from there are out in Afghanistan. There are also intelligence troops based at Chicksands in Bedfordshire and the engineers at Waterbeach. Not to mention the 80,000 troops who train every year at Stanter in Norfolk. But it's the RAF bases around the region which have been facing the most uncertain future. Today, the Prime Minister finally announced the results of the Strategic Defence and Security Review, ending months of speculation.
We have decided to retire the Harrier, which has served this country so well for 40 years. It is a remarkably flexible aircraft, but the military advice is clear. We should sustain the Tornado fleet as that aircraft is more capable and better able to sustain operations in Afghanistan.
So what does this mean for region's air bases and the thousands of people whose livelihoods depend on them? In a moment, we'll hear from Alex Dunlop at RAF Marham in Norfolk. But first, let's join Mike Cartwright, who's at RAF Wittering in Cambridgeshire. Mike.
Yes, no official word from Wittering tonight, only that they're absorbing what's been announced and that they'll be briefing those affected. But I don't think the loss of the Harriers has been a huge surprise to some people here. After all, the aircraft was due to be phased out by 2015, 2018 by the latest, but there's still anger within the community and anger amongst the services. My report begins tonight with the Prime Minister responding to a Harrier pilot who asked why he was losing his job.
Can I thank you for everything you've done for our country and everything the Harriers have done over an incredibly long period of time. It has been an incredibly capable aircraft and something we should be incredibly proud of as a country. But we do have to make decisions for the future.
Thank you, but goodbye to the Harrier. It's home, Wittering, for more than 40 years.
My husband's just been posted in here and new area, new surroundings. It's pretty sad because it's going to affect not just us but the community.
I can't see why they're doing it, to be quite honest. Don't make sense to me. How can you shut them all down and not have any planes and things? Yeah, I don't know, perhaps I'm just ordinary, but I don't know.
I think it's disgraceful, to be honest. I hear there's going to be closes at Cottesmore as well, and to close Wittering as well, I think it'll be bad for the area, especially for employment as well. 10
Harriers fly from here. Another 2 squadrons, 40 aircraft from Cottesmore close by. The loss of all 50, catastrophic, say councillors.
There'll be many people out of work. The unemployment rise here will be tremendous. It will take a lot of money out of the economy, and I don't think this government have thought this out, and they don't care a jot for the troops.
2,000 people work on the base, service personnel and civilians. 350 of those with the Harriers. The rest in logistics, catering, bomb disposal and much more.
My main concern at the moment is also the viability of RAF Wittering as a base, and I've already put in to have an urgent meeting with Liam Fox, and what I will be doing is putting forward a very strong case as to why the base should not be closed and should be kept going. It's vital for the local economy, and I think from a strategic point of view it's also important for the RAF nationally.
Wittering became home to the Harrier in 1969, an aircraft that served with distinction in the Falklands and in every conflict since. Its shelf life had already been extended. Today, the aircraft was shelved for good. Whether Wittering will become home to another aircraft is questionable. The loss of the Harriers made the headlines today, but over the coming days and the weeks we'll get the nitty-gritty, the fine detail. Then we'll know what's in store for everyone on this base and the community around it. Back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Well, 2 months ago, it was thought that the RAF would lose its Tornadoes, putting the future of RAF Marham at risk. Today, David Cameron said the Tornadoes would stay, but the future of the Norfolk base is still not entirely clear. Alex Dunlop is there now. Alex.
Well, Susie, I think there was quite a lot of relief behind me and in the wider community that depends on RAF Marham economically that the station will, for now, survive. I think as soon as it became clear earlier today that the Harrier fleet was going to be scrapped, the optimism here racked up a couple of gears that some or all of the Tornadoes would be saved. Why? Well, In a word, Afghanistan. The Prime Minister made it clear in the House of Commons today that the war there, that the tornado played a vital role in the war there.
Currently in the overhead, 12,000 feet.
In the next few days, the last of RAF Marham's tornadoes will return after a year in Afghanistan. 94 years after it was established, the station's fate was today revealed at Westminster. 4 squadrons, half of the 120 bombers are based here. The other half are at RAF Lossiemouth in Scotland. Also home to the Tactical Imaging Wing, this is one of Norfolk's largest employers. As well as 3,600 military and civilian staff, there are more than 1,200 contractors and 5,000 dependents. On site, 300 BAE employees service the GR4 model. The station contributes £102 million to the local economy. In Kandahar last year, I watched Marham's jets patrol the skies over Afghanistan, providing protection and reconnaissance for troops on the ground. Other recent campaigns include both Gulf Wars and the Kosovo conflict. Only last week, Air Marshal Timo Anderson spoke of the GR4's role as sophisticated and highly capable, if not preeminent.
I was shot down by an Iraqi system. I do not know what it was.
Former tornado navigator John Nichol was famously shot down over Iraq in 1991.
The tornado has been incredibly important in all recent conflicts, right back to the first Gulf War, going through Bosnia, going through Kosovo, the Overwatch in Iraq, the campaign in the second Gulf War in Iraq, right up to close air support in Afghanistan today. It performs a vital role.
The RAF station at Marham in Norfolk is the next port of call.
RAF Marham has had a glittering past.
RAF police, both human and canine, are on parade as the Russian visitors step from their plane.
In the 1950s, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was reminded of the RAF hunter's capability, should he wish to turn up the heat in the Cold War. And with Sandringham nearby, the Queen back then and today is a frequent and welcome visitor. So for now, RAF Marham appears to be secure, but of course there's no guarantee that the overall number of tornadoes won't be reduced or reconfigured, as the RAF calls it. Now, the next defence review will be in 2015, so we could be going through this all over again in 5 years' time. Back to you.
Alex, thank you. Well, earlier I spoke to the former head of the Army, General Sir Richard Dannatt, and asked him whether he believed this review was strategic or financial.
Well, money is a major element of this, but it is also strategic. I think one of the things that's been passed in the announcement today is that which the Prime Minister said, that we were doing this again in 5 years' time. I think that's terribly important, that we routinely and regularly have these strategic defence reviews. We haven't had one since 1998. That's a very long time. So let's keep doing it regularly. Of course there isn't enough money. No one wants to see cuts in the Navy, Army or Air Force. But against the background of the huge deficit that's got to be reduced, and as far as defence is concerned, a 38 billion black hole inherited from the previous government, it's not surprising there are going to be some cuts.
Are there any particular elements of this review that worry you?
From the Army point of view, being parochial, I would have been worried if we were engaged in any more than just the one operation in Afghanistan. I wouldn't have wanted to see the 7,000 headline off the Army figures, but given that we are just focusing on Afghanistan, we can probably just about deal with that reduction. Where we are, of course, after the end of the Afghanistan operation in 2014-2015, I think that's another place.
As far as those Army numbers, do you think there are any areas of this region that are particularly vulnerable?
I think the main units that recruit from East Anglia and the Look East area, I think will be secure. I think the reduction will be found right across the general overheads of the Army, that 7,000 figure. I think the implications for the Air Force, though, are rather more debatable.
We've obviously heard what's happening at Wittering, which is going to lose its Harriers, and what's happening at Marham, which is going to keep its Tornadoes. I mean, do you see a change in role for Wittering? Could it become an Army base, for example?
Well, I do. I mean, we reduced from 22,000 to 15,000 troops in Germany over the last few years, but there are still 15,000 troops and their families, about 55,000 British subjects in Germany, 20 years after the end of the Cold War and a very long time after the end of the Second World War. They're there for no other reason than we haven't got bases in England. So Wittering will be attractive as far as the Army is concerned to move into. And over time, when the Tornadoes are finally retired, both to Marham and also Lossiemouth up in Scotland, that will be attractive to the Army as well. So from West Norfolk's point of view, I think the future, as far as civilian jobs are concerned, is relatively settled and safe, in that when the Air Force is no longer the need for RAF Marham, it'll be called something barracks and the Army will be there, I'm pretty sure.
Thousands of troops from this region are currently in Afghanistan. The government has said that troops will have longer tours with shorter breaks. What impact do you think that will have?
Well, when you increase the workload, you've got to make sure that you also increase the life that people live, to make sure that the accommodation they have back at home is good enough, that their pay is appropriate, and of course their operational equipment is good. I've always felt that was really important, and although I'm retired, I should be keeping a very firm eye on the government to make sure that they don't slip in supporting our people.
General Sir Richard Dannatt, thank you very much.
Thank you, Susie.
Well, still